Hi, my name is Chris, and I want to share with you guys my picks for the top 10 movies of 2013. Now, I'm a huge fan of movies, and this year I believe I've seen more movies in the theater than I have any other year, I'm pretty sure. Of course, even though I have seen a lot of movies this year, there are several movies that I haven't got a chance to see. For instance, 12 Years a Slave. I really wanted to see that. It got really good reviews, and I just didn't have the time to see it. Also, Prisoners, I didn't get a chance to see that. That was a movie I was really looking forward to. I also haven't seen Saving Mr. Banks. Those are the three movies that would probably have made it onto this list. And once again, these are my picks, so you might not necessarily agree with them. Okay, coming up at number 10 is American Hustle, a movie I recently saw. Now, the performances in this movie were fantastic, and the dialogue was great. It has some plot elements that seemed a little too convoluted, which kind of got in the way. But overall, I'd say it was a very entertaining movie. It was very dramatic at some points and really funny at other points. And a couple good celebrity cameos. Number 9 is Disney's Frozen. Now, in recent years, the regular Disney animation studios have shown that they could step up their game with movies such as Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, and Frozen. They have shown that not only Pixar could make good animated movies, but we could also make good animated movies. The first half of Frozen has a lot of singing like the classic Disney animated movies. The songs were really great and really drove the story along, and the acting was really good, and it was an animated movie that the whole family could enjoy. It wasn't like some other animated movies this year that were just slapstick that kids could enjoy. It had lots of heart, and it was really funny. Olaf the Snowman really made that movie. I thought he'd be too childish, but I actually really enjoyed it, and he got the biggest laughs in the entire movie. Number 8 for me is Rush, directed by Ron Howard. And I felt this movie was one of the most underrated movies on this list, because not that many people saw it, but I really enjoyed it. The direction was great, the acting was phenomenal, especially from Daniel Bruhl. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but yeah, he gave a great performance as Niki Lauda. His performance was just I hope he gets some kind of recognition at the awards with that, because I don't know if he's been in a role this big, but he really showed me that he has great acting potential. And also Chris Hemsworth gives his best dramatic performance. And I like to see him in more dramatic roles outside of his role as Thor in the Avengers and his standalone movies. Coming in at number 7 is Pacific Rim. It's everything that the Transformers movies could have been and should have been. It has great action. It has a plot that's a bit convoluted at times, but it was great to see an original movie this year, since in recent years most movies have been sequels or prequels or reboots or whatnot. But it's nice to see an original action movie that really builds a universe that it could easily expand on. It can make several spin-off movies, and it's great. And it's great that Guillermo del Toro brought this cool action thing that you could just turn your brain off and just make you feel like a kid, without any of the humor that you would have gotten with a Transformers movie. Although it did have some silly humor, I thought it was a much smarter movie than the Transformers movies. And I know I'm comparing it to Transformers a lot, but it was just a really good action movie and a really original sci-fi movie, and I feel like it needs to be mentioned in this list. Number 6 is Fruitvale Station. This is probably the one that most of you guys probably haven't seen, but it's a story about a man in, I believe it was Hayward or somewhere in the East Bay, where he's a drug dealer, and he's trying to fix his life and trying to stop selling drugs. And on New Year's Eve, he goes out with his wife and his friends, and some things go down. If you have read the story of this, you know how the movie would end, but it's a really touching movie. Fruitvale Station has a great performance from Michael B. Jordan as Oscar Grant, and I really think he needs some recognition for this role. Most of the actors in movies on this list need recognition, but coming from someone who lives in the Bay Area, it really hits close to home. I hadn't read about it, so I didn't know how the movie was going to end. It was just a really touching movie, and I suggest that you guys definitely go see it if you have the chance. Number 5 is The World's End. Now, I think this was the funniest comedy of the year. It's directed by Edgar Wright, stars Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. This movie was hilarious in the theaters. Some of my friends didn't know what the movie was about, so they were really surprised and they had a blast, and some great action scenes, great sci-fi elements, and it's also very witty and funny. Number 4 is Star Trek Into Darkness. I really enjoyed J.J. Abrams' first Star Trek movie. It's one of my favorite action movies in recent years, and I was really looking forward to the sequel. Now, I know a lot of hardcore Star Trek fans didn't like this movie because it's a blatant ripoff of Wrath of Khan, and it had several throwbacks to Wrath of Khan, but I didn't feel like it was a remake of Wrath of Khan. I really enjoyed this movie. It did what some other action movies didn't do this year. This had action and a lot of good performances, a touching moment between Kirk and Spock, and a really great performance by Benedict Cumberbatch as the main villain. I won't reveal who he is if you haven't seen the movie yet and don't want it to be spoiled, but Benedict Cumberbatch, I felt like he was a more developed villain than the villain in the last Star Trek movie, which some people thought he was underdeveloped, the villain in the last Star Trek movie, but I felt like they definitely had it more focused on the villain, or the villains, because there's another villain in the movie who has more screen time than Benedict Cumberbatch, but I felt like Benedict Cumberbatch was a true villain in that movie, and I felt like it was also a great action movie. It was the most entertaining action movie I've seen this year. Number 3 is Gravity. Gravity was beautifully shot. It was one of the best looking movies I have seen probably since Avatar or Inception, and it really puts you in space. The one thing it does that most sci-fi action movies does is that it doesn't have sound in space. So you have all this debris flying around, and it makes it a lot more scary, like a bunch of debris coming at you, and there's no sound, and it just moves past you and you don't hear it coming. I was pretty surprised by the performance given by Sandra Bullock. It was better than I thought her performance would be. And the movie's not perfect with the physics and things, but for the most part, it's very realistic take on just how frightening it is to be out in space, and it's a movie that will be remembered long after 2013. Number 2 on my list is Captain Phillips. Now, some other reviewers who I watched their top 10 videos, they had this movie lower on the list or not on the list at all, but this movie never slowed down. It was an intense ride the whole way through. It had great performances from Tom Hanks, as always, and the pirates in this movie, this was their first time acting, and they totally blew it out of the water. Imagine not having any acting experience and just being thrown into a movie and then giving performances like they did. It was phenomenal. Unlike other movies on this list, I was constantly on the edge of my seat. Captain Phillips was one of Paul Greengrass's best movies. Like Gravity, it'll be a movie I won't soon forget about. Number 1 on my list is The Wolf of Wall Street. This movie was hilarious for the first 2/3 of the movie. It really captured the downward spiral of Jordan Belfort. And Leonardo DiCaprio's performance was spectacular. It was probably one of his best performances, and that's saying something. And I felt like this movie was a lot like Breaking Bad in that Jordan Belfort gets a ton of money and and he just lets this need for all this money and greed take him over, and he just starts becoming like an animal. And how crazy everything is in the first 2/3 of the movie really captures how in the last third of the movie he falls. The character transformation he does from the chronological beginning of the film to the end of the film, the change that Leonardo DiCaprio goes through in this movie really captures how greed can really change a person. And once again, Scorsese's direction was really great. The script was really great. The way all the actors acted their parts were fantastic. And I feel like this was the best movie of the year because it was dramatic, it was funny, it was intense, it was everything I hoped it would be and more. And that's why it's the #1 movie of the year. Now, 2013 was a great year in movies. It wasn't until May until the movies started getting good. And then in the fall, things got really good. And I'm really looking forward to the films in store for next year and hope to be doing another video at the end of next year. And I want to know, what were your top 10 movies of the year? Were there movies that I didn't mention that you thought should have been on this list? And I'll try to upload more videos to this channel.